So a lot of my years in business and also before I had, my own businesses, selling and sales was the superpower, if you want to call it that, that helped me get to the places where, I felt, I wanted to be monetarily, and also, with the right people and moving towards, the places and the desires and dreams that I'd sort of laid out and written out and also had in my mind. Now, I don't claim to be like the world's best sales trainer or, to have sold the most amount of anything, whether it's, coaching, consulting, service-based packages or products. This is not what I'm saying. However, I have personally made a lot of money from being pretty good with selling, and also helped a lot of other people make a lot of money, from teaching my fundamentals and also some of the advanced stuff too. So I just want to sort of share with you, if you've got a business, because if you've got a business, I want to try and see if I can help you a little bit. Basically, just share some of these insights and things from selling for a lot of years. Because when I speak to a huge amount of business owners, that's probably one of their biggest hang-ups, their biggest concerns is they don't want to come across as salesy, or it's just something that they don't see themselves being great at. And I would say 9 times out of 10, those people that share that with me, I instantly spot things inside of them, because I think that sentiment in itself, to be frank, is a big tell. I don't want to be salesy, and I don't want to be a sales snake, and I don't want to force people into buying things. Good. That's a good thing. That gives you what I see as a really strong guideline, pardon me, and a compass to make sure that you can mold yourself into or practice being the type of salesman, salesperson, saleswoman that you really want to be, So I'll run you back. I'll give you a little bit of backstory, just so you can sort of understand where my thoughts lie and my guiding compass, and I guess how I was indoctrinated and trained quite passively, but it's given me superpowers as far as I'm concerned. So there's my own personal experiences, from being younger, that have given me a huge dollop of observational skills and listening skills. And that happened from being really young, just because there was a lot of stuff going on around me, and I just got really good at listening and watching and paying attention to how people were feeling and how they said things and how they moved their body and the pace at which they spoke and how they used their hands and their eyes, to communicate things. And I mean, really, really young. I remember observing. I'm probably one of those weirdos. I don't know if weirdo is the right word. Maybe you resonate with this, but I remember so vividly people speaking to me from being a couple of years old. I remember interactions and things that I was doing in front of, my own eyes with my hands from being really young. Like, I feel like my memory is very, very strong. And yeah, life was a gift as far as I'm concerned. Some people, if I told you the full story, might say turbulent. You might say, wow, that's pretty colourful. But I feel like that gave me personally superpowers, superpowers. Like, it harnessed these attributes or these characteristics inside of me, like, you know, the pressure or the weight of the ground that creates a diamond. It sounds so cheesy, but genuinely, that, you know, that's how I feel. And I think that's one big thing straight away, is sales isn't about attempting to force things on people. I think the first big characteristic or trait or skill is your ability to tune into what people are actually saying, how they feel, and not being afraid to ask, you know, some of the tough things that need to be asked, particularly in, you know, with like coaching, you know, if it's fitness coaching, if it's, you know, holistic and wellness coaching, you know, if it's to do with like behavioral change or hypnotherapy, you've got to ask the tough questions to get to the core or the root problem. And then even when, you know, if you're selling cars, because I've done that too, I've sold commercial vehicles, even having the courage, bravery, I don't know if they're the right words, but having the gumption to actually ask the person, what is it that you're really shopping for? You know, help me understand so I can find out if we've actually got anything that'll tick that box for you. You know, help unlock the doors and, you know, let me come in for a moment and just see if I can help you figure this thing out. You know, like asking those questions is really important, but unless you have a very well practiced and a very well oiled communicative skill and ability to be highly observant and listen to what is going on with a person, as well as what they're saying and how they're saying it, you're going to miss a lot of things that happen between the gaps. 100%. You're going to miss a lot of things that go on. And I think that's the first problem that people come up against, is they'll say, well, it was just awkward speaking to that person. I'm like, well, maybe you made it awkward for them. Maybe you weren't actually listening to them. Maybe you weren't inquisitive enough, you know, to ask some of the tougher stuff, and maybe just some of the easier stuff, to just get somebody talking and sharing about themselves or what problems or situations they're currently experiencing. So that was the first sort of thing that's 100% helped. And then unknowingly over the years, up until maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, that's when I became acutely aware that my experiences of being younger had compounded and just helped me become very tuned in, you know, to what people were sharing, empathetic almost, you know, to human communication. Now, the second area, because I think, and again, I've mentioned this in a couple of my other videos, but I really do believe that people have experiences that give them gifts, you know, give them special powers. Like we have unfair advantages, and there's a book that talks about this. And I feel like my unfair advantage was, yes, you know, in my experiences from being younger. And then when I was less than 10 years old, my mum founded, you know, her first business. And it started off as a print and design shop. And I remember, and it started off as she was like making business cards and letterheads and compliment slips. This is, you know, stuff that used to, you know, get sold a lot of in the late 90s. And it was a local business, 4 local businesses, and, you know, people that needed, you know, bits of print work doing. And it just grew and grew and grew because it was so unique and so specialist, you know, within where we lived. And eventually we started selling the ink cartridges that we used in our own printers and the paper that we used in our own printers, and then all the paraphernalia that came with the print and design part of the business. And then people started asking, well, you're using all these great computers to do this. Do you know how to repair computers? And then that became a part of the business. And then we started building brand new, computers and doing all sorts of things. It was great, honestly. When I look back now at how much fun that was, I can imagine it was probably quite stressful for my mum, my stepdad, all those years ago. But I remember really early on, in those early stages of the business, growing and developing, when the business was still in our family house, I would go to the front door. People would be knocking on our front door, the row of terraced houses, and they would be asking for ink cartridges and paper. And quite often I would take the ink cartridge and take someone's money and double check that it was the right printer that they were getting the ink for and all this sort of stuff. And I just remember it being a really positive experience of exchanging something that we had, and they would say thank you and give money back. And it's just got moulded, and taught that there's something positive that happens inside of a monetary transaction really early on. And then as the business developed, then got a shop in town. And I was still at school, obviously, at this point. And I remember just, that's all I wanted to do was, like, when I'd finished school, I would come into the shop, take my school jumper off, and I would try and help out in the shop as much as I could without getting under people's feet and things. And I would try and serve people, and I would help the computer guys, try and repair computers, or they'd teach me about components, in PCs. It was just a lot of fun. Now, and then we ended up opening up a second shop, and I left school when I was 15, and I was the best fit at that point in time, to sort of leave school, work in the shop, and run this shop, for my parents. And between that point and just back another year or two, I would watch the people that worked for my mum, as well as my mum and my stepdad. I would watch them sell. But I didn't know it was selling. I was just watching. I was just observing. I remember just enjoying the whole process of watching somebody come in with a problem or needing something, and then them walking away with a new printer, or having put a deposit down for their new computer, or just walking out really happy with their print work for their business cards for their local business. And I would just watch how they did it, and I was just absorbing that and taking it all in. So by the time it came to, me having left school when I was 15, and then, being in the shop by myself, I was like, all I need to do is just do exactly what I've been watching and what I've been practicing these last few years. I know how to do this. It's normal. It's normal to, when someone is, near the doorway, hey, say hello to them, welcome them in, come from behind the desk, ask them if they need anything, engage in some conversation, ask how their day was. What do you need today? Is there something I can help you with? And then tend to their needs. And because I'd spent so much time in and around all the different products and the services that we provided, I knew it all off the top of my head. It was so well practiced. And even thereafter, because of where the shop was, the one that I was running when I was younger, my mum would bring stock over, most evenings to top up the shelves and things like that. And there'd be this period of time often of where, if there was a few customers in and I was on my own, and say my mum and my stepdad came into the shop at the same time, we'd sort of like triple team the customers, and we'd chat to them all, and, we'd just be having a good time just selling stuff. And again, even then, when I was just more aware, I'd just watch and just take it all in. I remember just thinking, oh, that's really cool what you just did there. I like that little question you asked, or, the way my mum would, use her feminine, to soften someone up and then, take them to the counter and, sell them something in the way that, my stepdad, because he was a police officer, and the way he would do things completely differently. It's almost like I was being schooled by two different entities that had two very different ways of doing things, but with the same goal, to make sure that these people that were local to us, some of them our neighbours, our friends, and because of where we lived, everyone knew each other. So there was never any attempts to sell something to someone that would have them upset or come back in and be waving their fist or banging on the door after shop hours. It was always very wholesome and very real. And I didn't realise that those early days, of what I was being shown and what I was observing was going to serve me so well. I really didn't. And I think that's something you really need to consider. There's a couple of things. So, number one is, do you have any unfair advantages? Have you spent a long time doing something that you can turn into... Sorry, excuse me. I was just enjoying one of these. Tropicana Sparkling. Very nice. However, it's making me burp a lot on this video, so I apologise. Do you have an unfair advantage over others? Something that is it's intuitive, because that's what intuition is. It's such a well-practiced thing that is just an intrinsic part of who you are. You don't even realise, and you just do things. I call it a reflex. It's just a reflex. It's just an extension of who you are as a person. Is there something that you've done for so long, for so many years, whether that's experiences that maybe you can harness as a superpower, or something that you've just got so many reps in with that, again, it's like a third arm or a second head, to what you can be really great at. And this is why I've always had such a positive outlook on sales and selling. And I've told this story, but more of a detailed fashion when I've been on other people's podcasts over the years. And I've sort of told the story about this wholesome background and how I've taken that into the high ticket coaching space, and then, trained other people on how to, see things, a different way. Because what I see, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but what I see with high ticket sales and high ticket selling is people just follow a script or a framework, but they're not actually trained, because it's hard to train this stuff. I think you've either experienced it or you haven't. I know that sounds a little bit, it's this way or this way, and I tend not to, talk in that fashion, but, if you haven't had the experience of being in a wholesome family shop environment across multiple locations, and watching your parents and the people that you love and respect doing such positive things for other people, and this natural exchange of energy going on. If you haven't experienced that, then how can you ever use that as a reference point? And instead, what I see, of high ticket sales and people that teach high ticket sales and coaching the coach to be the coach who needs to coach the coach. Where does it end? Is, well, listen, we've got this framework, or we've got this script. Do this, do that, follow this flow. If they say this, say that. And people aren't trained on just how to be human. They're not trained to just listen and observe and be respectful. Often, people are just waiting to say what they're ready to say or what they want to say, rather than being adaptive on the spot and actually figuring out after, the first 5 or 10 minutes, you know what? Just from what you've been sharing this last 5 or 10 minutes, John, I just don't think this is going to be right for you, buddy. And here's why. That's hard to train into people, really hard to train into people. But anyway, I promise I'm coming back to my point. So there's the first couple of things you need to think about. Now, if you don't have experience with selling, and maybe instead what you've experienced is being sold to by shysters, like the one that people cling on to a lot is like the greasy car salesman, right? The slick back hair, and then, he's a bit slick himself. He comes wandering across the the car sales room, and the last thing you want to do is actually speak to him, because all you've got in your head is he wants his commission, he needs his commission, and I'm just a paycheck. Right? And maybe that's been like one of the big outlying experiences you've had, with sales. And then you think, well, I don't want to be a salesperson. I'm going to find it really hard to sell my own stuff if that's how salespeople are perceived. Well, guess what? If you don't like that, and that's not you, it's very, very, very challenging to be anything like, even in the same universe of characteristics or behavior as that person. I promise you. I absolutely promise you. Instead, think about how you would love to be sold to. What is your, desired experience? Do you want to be told the truth? Of course I do, Rich. Well, tell the truth. Do you want to be asked the tough questions, to make sure that, that other person or that business or whoever it is understands really what's going on at the core, so they can at least provide advice or guidance? If not, the perfect solution. Absolutely. Well, guess what? You're going to have to get good at that stuff. Do you want to have your prices up front, and on your website, rather than waiting to be revealed on the back end of a 60-minute discovery call? Absolutely. Great. Well, put your prices on your website then. You can answer all of your own problems or all of the objections that you have around, not wanting to be a certain way in sales. How do you want the experience to be for your people? And then follow that. Use that as a guiding North Star, as a compass. Because you can sell in any way. You can absolutely sell in any shape, form, or fashion. 2025, the 8th of February, 2025, right now, because this was never the case, right? But you can sell, via videos, like video sales letters, webinars. You can sell via Google Docs, like you can sell over DMs. You can sell over the telephone. You can sell over Zoom. You can sell in person. There's so many different modalities to be able to sell your product, your service, whatever it is that you've got. So many different ways. And I think if you can put a stake in the ground and say, well, this is how I want to sell, this is how I want to put my product across. I mean, there's naturally some pros and cons for all of those different ways of doing things. And then you have to cater your whole business and your marketing output to suit, whichever one of those, you decide to go with, of course. And some of them you'll test perhaps, and they just won't suit you. They won't suit the types of people you're trying to sell to, like the demographic. Like, would I try and sell to, 70-year-old, retired men via a Google Doc on the DMs of Facebook? Probably not. I'd probably want to use phone calls or more in-person, sort of techniques, because they're probably just going to appreciate that natural touch of being in person or a phone call. Are you going to get a ton of 70-year-olds wanting to jump on Zoom? You might do in a generation or so's time, maybe you and I will, because it'll be the sort of the norm. But you've got to think about who you're selling to and what the outcome is that you're trying to, help them achieve. But I would encourage you, deeply, to consider what sticking points, what thoughts you've got around why selling or what sales means. And then ask yourself, is that true? Again, the easy example, like I mentioned before, is people get hung up on this like slick, sleazy salesman, car salesman. I've got friends that are car salesmen and they're nothing like that, by the way. They're an absolute pleasure, to spend time with. And I was a car salesperson. That was my most short-lived role as a salesperson, by the way, because I wholeheartedly disagreed with the way that the sales manager was trying to get me to force extra insurance and car mats onto little old ladies. I actually walked out of that job, just telling you the truth. Hopefully my kids won't watch this and think it's okay to do that. But because I'd just come from working for, my family in this wholesome environment to all of a sudden have these high pressured targets of where it's like, well, you need to sell at least 1, 2, or 3 of these things to every person that buys a car. What if they don't need it? What if they can get it down the road for cheaper? Like, I'm going to tell this person the truth. I'm not just going to try and force them to buy £300 worth of car mats or this extra paint protection when I know my friend does that down the road. It was just a whole host of weird for me. So you've got to stick to what you believe to be right, because then you can feel good about what you're doing. I think that's a really important factor in all of this. So try not to take advice from people that tell you there's only one way to do things. And if you don't say these things, and if you don't stay silent at this part of the call, it's all going to go to shit. And if you don't remain deep rooted in your alpha masculine, I don't know, I've heard some real crap over the years of people teaching others how to sell stuff, Got to ask yourself, like, how good do you want to get? If you feel like you've got something to really help the world, and maybe a particular pocket of people, like your demographic, your guys and girls, then the main thing to think about is this. Sales is just communication. That's all it is. So rather than thinking, how can I be a better salesperson? Your quandary is, how can I become just far superior, or at least a little bit better at communicating in all parts of my life, right? Not just when I'm, trying to sell my wonderful, AirPods, or, the sell me this pen thing. What a fucking crock of shit that is. I've even done a video on that. It's so cringy. Don't go back and watch it. That when I try and help people to get better at selling, I say, right, well, life doesn't just happen in all these different departments. You've not just got your personal life or your relationship here and your business here, and then, your relationship with yourself. It's all in one big melting pot. It's one big pot that's been stirred around together all at the same time. So I might get someone who's, scared of selling or fearful of selling or has a bit of ickiness around it to go and be sold to and try and enjoy the process and figure out whether they did enjoy being sold to by that person and what attributes about the way they got communicated to, they enjoyed. What didn't they enjoy? Also, just going out and making idle chit chat with people is a really great thing to practice. You know, if that's a weakness, you know? How can you get better at communicating with yourself, communicating with other people, deeply connecting with yourself, and spending time wanting to deeply connect with other people? Those basics, those fundamentals will not just help you have a better relationship with selling, but also they'll help you have a better relationship with yourself and everyone else around you. Because you're leveling up your communication at base level. And then that helps your confidence, because then every department of your life now experiences a smoother, more communicative, connective individual. Do you know what I mean? Far easier than thinking, right, I'm a salesperson. I put my hat on and I'm now a salesperson, so I need to act and behave in a completely different way. Fuck off. No, you don't. You're just asking for trouble. You're just asking for a disconnected, overwhelming, burnt out experience of life. If you have to pretend to be or act, in being someone else versus who you are, much better to just be yourself. There's a famous quote, right? Just be yourself because everyone else is taken. I can't remember. If you remember the quote, okay, just drop it in the comments. But anyway, it's been nice to share with you. Hopefully you've gotten some value out of this, something that can help you personally, through my meanderings, wanderings, and personal insights over the years. If it has been useful, drop me a comment, give a little like, on the video as well. If it hasn't been useful, you think it's been absolute tosh, then you're more than welcome to tell me that as well. All right, have a great one. I'll see you soon.